Well, as Lord Mayor, naturally you're very proud of your city. And the City of London is the world's oldest continuous workers and residents democratic cooperative. We've been holding elections since about 640 AD, when we began electing sheriffs. The role of Lord Mayor began in 1189, so it's a recent role, and we're still trying to work out quite what it does. But I boil it down into three things: commerce, community, and charity. So we are trying to create prosperity within our square mile. I don't know if there is a special moment of any kind. We'll be talking about a very special trip to China. Clearly the Lord Mayor Show, which is the world's oldest parade, has 250,000 people coming out on the streets. It's broadcast to millions around the world. Clearly, if that's your very first day in office, that's pretty exciting.
When you met China's Vice President Han Zheng, it was a time that many would describe as a politically and diplomatically delicate time between China and the UK. So what were the main priorities on both sides?
The thing that we were trying to look at, though, was to keep this dialogue going on trade and co-investment in a period, as you point out quite rightly, which was diplomatically rather sensitive. Vice President Han was wonderful. We had just short of an hour together. But I think there were two things that he emphasized with which I completely agree. The first was the need to look at China's overall investment, particularly in terms of pensions. The Chinese population is aging, and it needs to diversify, and that diversification is something that London is particularly good at. The second thing that we were very interested in were Vice President Han's remarks, quite good remarks about the importance of using Hong Kong as China's window out on the world and the world's window into China.
And the China-UK financial and economic dialogue resumed earlier this year after a long pause. So from your perspective, how would you characterize the current financial cooperation between China and the UK?
The current financial cooperation is, frankly, really good. I think as you dig down into it a little bit further, areas of particular cooperation are therefore investment, but also green finance. Green finance has been a big thing. The City of London has been running an economic dialogue with China on green finance. Dr. Ma Jun, I think now getting on for 8 or 9 years. So it's been a particular area of cooperation there that leads naturally into technology. And so we're seeing a tremendous amount of technology investment from China, but we're also seeing a genuine interest in British firms in Chinese technology.
I think green finance has drawn a lot of attention across the world now. So the Xi'an Global Green Finance Index suggests that some of the global financial hubs are stepping back from green finance, especially after Donald Trump's return to the White House. But London is still at the top of the chart. China issued its first ever green sovereign bonds in London this April, worth about $620 million US. It's not that aggressive, but do you see this as renewed momentum between China and the UK regarding green transition?
Well, as I said, we've had a long history of cooperation on green finance. The Green Finance Index that came out in April was a bit disturbing for those who are concerned about the planet, and that's simply because there was a knockback in all centers, significant drops in interest, and yes, largely due to the U.S. administration leaving the Paris agreements again. So we're seeing this tension. However, there is still a great ability to work together, and the Chinese bond is a good example of that. Personally, I'm disappointed, in the American lack of interest in it, but that can change. Elections are only 3.5 years away for the presidency. They're having their midterms. America is a divided country in many regards, and that means that a significant portion of the population are still very interested in green issues, and the other side of the population have got higher priorities. But we'll see where we go.
Let's talk about London as the financial hub. And do you think London is still that competitive? I don't want to put my words in your mouth, but I guess that you're going to say yes. It's still very competitive.
Well, you can't be a Lord Mayor and not be a bit of a booster. So yes. Why is London competitive? Well, since Brexit in 2016, 9 years ago, the workforce in London has increased from 525,000 to 678,000. The second fact, and one of the conversations we're having repeatedly in China as Lord Mayors, global assets under management in London have risen from 11% to 13% over the same 9-year period. They're actually managing more money. 2% of global assets is a huge number, and it's being managed by less than 1% of the world's population. That is the City of London's core strength, managing money on behalf of others. I would say it's a pretty rosy picture, but we do have a problem in listed equities.
It's a pretty rosy picture, as you said, but the number of companies listed on the London Stock Exchange dropped by 60% since the 1990s. Yeah, what do you think led to this outcome?
Some people would blame regulation, other people would blame forms of regulation like environmental and social governance requirements. Some would blame the accounting firms or the law firms taking fees out. Whatever it is, the product of listing on a listed exchange has become less attractive. It's not just London, it has been a global phenomenon. Our competitors in Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi are definitely being far more open. And America seems to be retreating into very much an America first, American firm advantaged situation, which is ultimately, in our experience, not good for trade, not good for investment domestically or internationally.
US President Donald Trump seems to be moving the US market single-handedly. Businesses don't like uncertainty. And do you think because of that, countries like UK, China, and many other players will be working together more closely?
I believe we have an opportunity to work much more closely together. If you look at it, the US administration seems to want to rerun an experiment that was last run in 1930, 95 years ago, which I'm referring specifically to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. This was an attempt to protect and encourage US industry. It ferociously backfired and is well recognized to have exacerbated the Great Depression in America. So I am a big proponent of things like the CPTPP, the trade bloc that Britain joined in December. Is there a way that we can get China observer status? Should other countries be joining it? Could the EU join that club in some specialized form? And I think the more that we can prove that free and open trade benefits the world, we can look back 3.5 years from now and say, you chose this path for your experiment, we chose this one, and we put our money where our mouth is kind of what I'm daring governments around the world to do.
Looking into the future, do you think London's role as a financial hub will be more important because of the trade tariffs and the trade barriers we're looking at right now?
Definitely. You said earlier that that businesses don't like uncertainty. I would disagree slightly.
Mm-hmm. They like uncertainty, you think?
Of course they do.
They do?
Yeah. If you knew what the price of something ought to be, you don't need markets. We actually like uncertainty. What we don't like is uncertainty about how the rules of the game will change. What we're seeing right now is capricious, rapid change followed by backfiring. So we don't know how the rules will change. And that's what businesses really want to know. How are the rules going to change? And then they can live with that. Within those rules, there's a lot of uncertainty, and we love it. That's what we thrive on. That's why we talk about risk and reward all the time. So I think the problem for America has been that they're tearing up the way in which the rules change and leaving it to, as I said earlier, some very capricious, overly snap decisions.